Hey, welcome to Casa Colina. Sorry, I was too lazy to go down the ramp over there. So, follow me over to the educational center. Let me get down from this position. I'm such a bad driver, I always go off course. Welcome. Tonight we're going to talk about wheelchair and seating and the clinic we have here at Casa Colina. Right now I'm sitting in the iBot, but let me put this aside and then we can get going. Okay, so first of all, why should you come to Casa Colina Wheelchair and Seating Clinic? Well, there's a few reasons why getting a physical therapist involved. I have no financial stake in what you get for equipment, and not that that's an issue with vendors, but I'm kind of your objective friend that you take clothes shopping. So I'm the one who says, I know you like that outfit, but I'm not too sure it's really what you're going for. So I can kind of talk through what are your goals, what are you looking for, and kind of direct you into what might be best for equipment. I'm going to do a really detailed physical therapy evaluation. I'm going to look at your strength, your range, your posture, and just see how we can optimize all that in your wheelchair and seating. I'm also going to really talk about your goals. What are you looking for in a wheelchair? If you've had one, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what are you going to be able to do that you can't do without that wheelchair? Because what we're doing is we're building a report for someone at your insurance company to read, someone who doesn't know you at all. The other reason you want to come to clinic is that documentation. So everyone has their insurance nightmare stories. So, there's like appeals and all that sometimes happen. So you really want to go to someone who knows the documentation, the buzzwords, what your insurance company is looking for. Along those lines, the vendors we use routinely are vendors who also have an ATP certification like I do, which is a certification. I took a test from an organization called RESNA, which states I know how to do wheelchair and seating evaluations. All our vendors, they're not therapists. One is, but they don't need to be therapists, but they're also ATP certified. And our vendors work for companies that also know how to do documentation. They know the timeline of when it needs to get in. They look over my documentation as another pair of eyes to make sure I'm not missing something and all that. The other thing I can help you with is navigating the system. It's way more complex than it should be. So that is something I can help you do, help you know what your rights are, help you know if we're trying to fight for something, what words to say to make it happen. So what is the process? What do we do in the wheelchair clinic? So wheelchair clinic happens with the vendor present as well, unless you have an insurance that none of our vendors use, then I'm kind of stuck. But we have the vendor present. So the vendor is helpful in that they can tell me, hey, this piece of equipment has come back with a lot of repairs. This is good quality equipment. So, and they can help go through the order form as well. So you have three minds, the patient, the vendor, the therapist, and anyone else the patient wants to get involved, all talking together as to what will work best for you. So what can you do on your part coming to clinic? I'd like you to come with opinions. Come with opinions of what you're looking for, what you've used, what you like, what you don't like. Try to do your homework, just like you would if you were buying a car, because some of this stuff costs about the same or more. So the more you can go out there to look at what equipment's out there, and we have all this equipment and more in our wheelchair shed. If we don't have what you're looking for and what you want to trial, we can almost always get that. Sometimes what happens too, sometimes the vendor needs to do a home assessment. to make sure whatever we're recommending is actually going to fit into your house. The other thing you'll need to do is go to your doctor and get what they call a face-to-face. So insurance likes redundant paperwork. So they want me to do a report outlining this is the patient I'm seeing in front of me. These are their impairments. This equipment is going to help accommodate those impairments. We've ruled out anything less expensive. And in good faith, we're saying this is really what they need. They want to see the doctor have that same train of thought and write a similar report. And then the vendor accumulates everyone's documentation, looks it over, sends it to the insurance company. So we're usually talking about 2 to 3 months total from the time of the evaluation to the time of delivery. Sometimes it's longer if it's a complicated case. Delivery can happen at your house, but if it's a complex situation, sometimes we'll recommend you come back to clinic, make sure everything is as ordered, make all the adjustments, make sure this is what we were looking for. So the other thing we can go over tonight is talk about what are the different levels of equipment. We have basic, we have very complex, as you can see here. So let me talk about codes, because insurance companies talk in codes. So you have a basic hospital wheelchair like you see in the lobby. Those are what they call a K0001. This would be something we could show you in clinic. And if we want to get something fancier, we would probably have you try this out first, just to say we ruled out something really basic and it's not going to work. But this works for a number of people. So we always try this. This is what they call a K004. It's a lightweight wheelchair, not ultra lightweight, lightweight. The other thing is it has some adjustability. That's what makes it fancier than the hospital lobby chairs. So this rear axle, I can move it up and down about 1 inch. And same with the front casters. I can move them up and down a few centimeters. I can get different size front casters. Some people like the smaller casters because it's a smaller turning radius, doesn't get in the way of their feet. Sometimes we get thicker casters so that they can go over uneven terrain well. And with the K4, you can see how it has this nice solid back. It's not going to stretch out like those hospital lobby chairs do. It's going to give you nice support. We can get backrests that are this tall. We can get them shorter, whatever amount of support you need. And this backrest does come off. So this chair can be folded up and put in a car. The other thing that's nice is if you want something lightweight in terms of lifting into the car, we can really disassemble this chair as much as you need to get it as light as possible. And really, this is easy to do. It just don't work well under pressure. Okay, so next, this is what they call a K5, and we actually have 2 examples of K5s. So a K0005, or K5 as we call it, is an ultra lightweight chair. Not lightweight, ultra lightweight. But also what's really important is it's very customizable. So I talked about how we can move the axle around 1 or 2 inches on that one. This has an axle plate that allows us to move that rear wheel forward and backwards. And that's going to make the wheelchair feel a lot easier to move. If we can get your center of gravity right over that rear wheel, it's not going to feel as heavy because you're not going to have so much weight going through the front casters. We can also, actually, let me show you that on this other chair. So this is also a folding chair. I can take the backrest off, the cushion off, flip up the foot plates and fold it up. As you can see, I can take the wheels off. So this is also a K5 chair. And you can see how it differs from this one in that when you sit in this K5 chair, your hips are going to be lower. Some people like being bucketed in the chair because it gives them a sense of stability in the chair, more balance. Other people don't like that, but it works for a lot of people. What we like to see, ideally, is that we set up this rear axle so that when you're sitting in the chair, the tip of your middle finger hits that rear axle. Because what that tells me is we're not going to strain your shoulders. So if on a typical standard wheelchair from the hospital lobby, your arms are going to be back here to push. Here, they're closer, and I can push and glide along with less effort, less strokes, and with each stroke I can push and go a little further. So these K5 chairs we build. We start with the base. There are 3-4 major brands out there. So we decide, okay, what base do we ideally want? Some of them have a little different features than others. That may be something that you need. Then we say, okay, what backrest do we want? What height backrest? How much contour to the backrest? Do we need lateral trunk supports to really keep you in the middle? And what cushions? We have air cushions, we have gel cushions, we have custom cushions. We have cushions that completely eliminate pressure underneath your bottom. We have a whole slew of cushions you can try. The other thing we do cushion-wise is we pressure map. So we put a pressure map sensor that you sit on, and then we can show you in real time if there's excess pressure underneath the bony areas of your bottom, and that can help us choose the right cushion for you as well. So you're probably wondering how this chair comes apart. So I would take the cushion off. I usually don't need to take the backrest off. I would fold down the backrest, and then I would take the wheels off. I can take those tippers off or just flip them up. And basically, this is the frame I would put in the chair. It fits, you can sit in on a seat, or you can fit in most trunks. So why would you want a rigid frame chair, which is what this is called? When you have a folding chair, there's a lot of flex in the frame. So if you want the most efficient push, you want a rigid frame chair. So every push, you're directly propelling yourself forward. So the other things we have to think about when we go through the order form is what brakes do we want? Do we want these low brakes so that when you're pushing, the brake's not going to be in your way? Or do you just want a standard high brake? Just something standard that you know how it works. We decide what size caster we want, what width caster we want. Do we want air tires? Do we want non-air tires because you don't want to deal with that? Do you need rubber-coated hand rims because you don't have a good grip, so you want to just be able to use friction to keep your hands on that tire? We also will get side guards. Keeps your clothing clean and keeps your bottom sitting right in the middle so you don't shift over one side to the other. Let me see what other features. So as you can see, when I say the more you can do your homework before you come to clinic, the better, because we have an hour-and-a-half appointment time. We'll bring you back for another appointment if we need to, if we haven't made all our decisions, all our trials. But you can see we have a lot to go over, a lot of decisions to make. So the more you kind of are familiar with equipment that's out there and what you think you want and don't want, that really helps streamline the whole process when you actually come to clinic. So that's our manual chairs. Now, we have some people who want a manual chair, and that fits their needs for the most part. And that fits their needs in terms of being able to put it in a car and get around the house really easily. But maybe they have problems with pain or joint instability, wear and tear on their shoulders, but they don't really want to transition to a power chair because that's overkill. What we can do is we can take a manual chair, a K5 ultra lightweight chair, and we can add a power assist system. So this is fairly new in the market, so I'm not going to pretend I can take this on and off seamlessly. But know that without all this power assist, this chair looks just like that one over there, okay? So there are different power assist systems. This is just one that's on the market. This is the Key Mobility Twist. And it's really cool because it gives you 3 options in one package. So this motor I can put on the back of the chair, back here. So it's pushing me along. I still have to steer, I still have to stop, but I'm not putting the effort in because it's pushing me along. I can have it in the front without the tiller. And again, it's pushing me along. The nice thing when it's in the front, these wheels are off the ground so that they don't get tripped on when you're going over uneven terrain, because this becomes your front caster. And the third option in this package is the tiller system. So that's probably the easiest system, right? Because you're not pushing, you're not using your arms to stop. Everything's through the tiller. There are other power assist systems where the motor is within the wheel. So there's a few options there that the motor is a power assist. So with each stroke, it's pushing you even further and with less effort. The other systems out there that have the motor in the wheel, you can have a little joystick that you add to the chair. So it drives like a power chair. It just doesn't have the suspension and the torque, the robustness of a bigger power chair. So this can give you the best of both worlds. If you're really, for the most part, a manual wheelchair user, but there are times where you need to rest your shoulders, preserve your shoulders, and you need the power assist. Generally, the rule of thumb is that you need to be in a K5 before you can request the power assist. So to backtrack a little, the other reason why you may want to come to a clinic to pick out the right wheelchair is insurance companies really only want to hear from you once every 5 years when it comes to expensive equipment. So if for some reason you go in the wrong direction and get a piece of equipment that you realize isn't quite meeting your needs, you're somewhat stuck for the next 5 years, unless you have a major change of condition or a change of insurance. Those would be the only situations where you could then go and get something else. Okay. Now, when we go into power, we already talked about power assist. The most basic power would be a scooter. These scooters do come apart. There are scooters out there on the market that fold up nice and neat like a suitcase. But the challenge is those companies haven't approached insurance to get a code. So again, insurance pays for a code. So when you get a K4 or a K5, they don't care what K4 or K5 you're getting, as long as that chair has been coded as such. So to backtrack a little too, these chairs are all aluminum. So there are carbon fiber chairs out there that are crazy lightweight, but some of them do crack if you're rough with a chair. There are titanium chairs out there that are really sturdy and also lightweight. But unfortunately, some insurance companies like Medicare won't cover that additional expense for a pricier type of metal. So, like I said, this does come apart. And I always like to show that because some people, want power, but they really want to be sure that it's something they can put in the car. So I like to show them the reality of putting it in the car. So what you do first is you take off the seat, which is a little bulky. You take the battery off. And then you separate the motor from the front. And you loosen this. And that's what goes in the car. So the other option is to get some sort of lift system depending on your car. So you can just drive the scooter onto that and not have to go through all that, taking it apart, putting it together with every trip you take. So like I said, there are a lot of really nice, more compact, sometimes lighter scooters that are out there, but majority of them aren't coded for insurance. They're cash pay only items. So we can't help you get them through insurance. Because again, insurance is buying you a scooter, that particular code. They don't care what kind, as long as the manufacturer had it coded as a scooter that's reimbursed by insurance. Next, we have Group 2 power chairs, which are really basic power chairs, basic electronics. But there is a huge, really wide variety of power chairs. So this is pretty much the smallest Group 2 power chair out there. As you can see, it looks suspiciously like the scooter seat, which it is, same company. But now instead of the whole tiller and the base, it's got the joystick. It comes apart. This one comes apart just like the scooter does too. So this one could be transported if you don't mind taking it apart. So that brings me to an issue of patients' rights. When we put in requests through insurance, we're requesting a Group 2. And sometimes we will request a specific Group 2. Like this patient needs a Group 2 and they need the Go Pride, Go Chair Med wheelchair because it's the smallest thing to fit in their house. And I try to be specific if we've really narrowed it down to a specific brand and style and all that, because then the vendor can't try to give you something else. So like I said, especially in Group 2s, there's a wide variety of chairs. Some of them really poor quality. And yeah, somehow it may fit under the category for a Group 2 or a category for a K5, but really doesn't have the quality, durability, adjustability that some of the other chairs that you see here do. So that is part of the patient rights. If a chair comes and you're like, that's not what we talked about in clinic, that's not going to meet my needs, you can say, no, I'm going to need to refuse that chair. And then go back through your insurance company to see where the issue was. Is this the vendor taking it upon themselves to change what was requested? Again, that's why we use some of the vendors we do in clinic, because we're all sitting together talking the same talk, so they know exactly what we're looking for. Some insurance companies dictate, though, that you go to other vendors who may not have the same degree of experience and may try to steer you to something else. But that is part of your patient rights. Okay, so then we get to the fancier, or I should say more complex, Group 3 power chairs. Those are diagnosis driven. So these others, we justify them by explaining your impairments. Why can't you walk? Why can't you walk with a walker or with a brace? Why can't you use a more basic chair? We explain your impairments and why anything less isn't going to accommodate them. But a Group 3, you also have to have a neurological diagnosis or a congenital diagnosis to qualify. However, going back to the Group 2 discussion, now more and more manufacturers are making Group 2 chairs that look pretty close to a Group 3 and can get you some of the features, some of the key features that you need, like power seat elevation. You can get in some Group 2 chairs, not this one, but some of them. This chair also will tilt. And that you can get in a basic Group 2, but that's all you would get. So you can see with the Group 3, this does everything. So it tilts, it raises up, it reclines, you can elevate the legs. And this seat elevation is something that has just become available through insurance in the past year or so, because insurance companies appreciate that people need it for reaching. They need it for transfer sometimes to give them a little more leverage. So we also know it's very helpful for when you're traveling through a crowd because then you can see over the crowd like everyone else can and see where you're going. Which also leads me to another discussion. When we discuss your needs and explaining your needs to your insurance company, we always emphasize what your needs are in the house. Medicare and most insurance companies feel that their funding is for what you need in the house. But then, as an aside, we'll talk about, okay, what sort of terrain are you going around outside, so we can discuss what type of group 3 would be durable for that. But when we build the report, it's for what's in your house. Now, the exception is Medi-Cal, California's Medicaid. They do care about your needs in the community. So we can sometimes get a lot more if that's where a lot of your needs are on the outside through Medicaid. And so sometimes what we'll tell you is, okay, I hear your needs. You're talking about what your needs are outside. And so we're going to put this through Medicare, knowing we're going to get a denial, but you have a secondary as Medicaid or a Medi-Cal sign-over. Then we can put it through there and they'll probably approve it. So back to group 3. So there's a lot of decisions to be made in a group 3. One is, what is the base chair do we want to get? There are a handful of really reputable manufacturers out there, and each with a slightly different style that may be beneficial for one patient over the other. This is what they call a mid-wheel drive chair, which most of them are. And you can see the mid-wheel is right underneath a person's center of gravity. So the nice thing about mid-wheel drive is that it turns on a dime. It turns on itself, okay? But if you're going outside over a lot of uneven terrain, sometimes it doesn't work as well as something that might be more of a front-wheel drive. Even rear-wheel drives sometimes go over uneven terrain nicely because they're pushing you along. But a front-wheel or rear-wheel drive has a little bigger turning radius. So that's when we may talk a lot about, okay, what's your environment in your house? Do you have like really tight corners that you have to turn? Because maybe a front-wheel drive will be better. Or do you have really tight spaces? So you need something that turns on a dime like this. If you look at the base, you can see that this has really superior suspension. So I don't know if you can see the basically springs down here, the shocks. They're also in the back. So these front and back casters, what they'll do is that they'll float so that when you're going over like a bump of some sort, all 6 wheels will stay in contact with the ground because there is a pivot point here and suspension. So that is one big difference between a group 2 and a group 3, is just that level of suspension. And where that's going to make a difference is if you have spasticity that's going to be set off by a real bumpy ride, if you have a lot of pain issues, or if you have a lot of skin issues. So, you know, our bottoms get bony, especially if you have muscle atrophy. And when you're going over a lot of uneven terrain, that can lead to some skin breakdown too if you don't have good suspension. So this chair, we again build, we decide on the base that we want, and then we can mix and match. We may get a cushion that's from a different manufacturer, maybe a backrest from a different manufacturer. We can decide what headrest. Do you need wings on the headrest so that you're not like leaning to one side? There are different armrests out there. There are some arm troughs. We can get a tray if you need a tray. We can get a harness for the front of your chest. And sometimes we can do custom seating. So if you have a really unique shape and scoliosis, a significant scoliosis, and you failed using anything off the shelf, hasn't really controlled you, hasn't really been comfortable, then we may talk about some sort of custom seating. Is it something we mold to you? Is it, there are some backrests and cushions out there where basically we can put them together. They have like blocks of foam. So we can decide what density foams we want, some foams that are more recessed than others, just to kind of match the shape of your back. These are basically big computers when you talk about a group 3 wheelchair that has advanced electronics. So it's a big computer. So if it feels like really squirrely, the vendor or myself, with guidance from the vendor on the phone, can reprogram it. So we can program how quickly it stops, how quickly it starts up, how sensitive it is to turn. And there's also 4 different speeds. You don't need 4 speeds if you don't want it, but there are 4 ranges of speeds too. So you have an indoor speed, indoor fast, outdoor fast, that sort of thing. You have a little horn if someone's in your way. And also I was talking about the different seating. What else? Oh, and then if you can't use a regular joystick, we have a tray of different joystick handles if you have some impairment in your hand, or if you can't use your hands at all, there is a slew of options. There's chin controls, there's head controls, there's mouth controls, little tiny joysticks. There's also an iPad where you can do eye gaze to control your wheelchair, and there's also Google Glasses now. So the Google Glasses, they have converted so that you can also direct your chair through the glasses. So there's a wide variety of basic and complex. And that is the bulk of my discussion. Hope that helped. So I almost forgot to talk about the iBot. You saw me doing little tricks in it at the beginning there. iBot, spelled I-B-O-T, is made by Mobius Mobility out of Manchester, New Hampshire. We are one of 2 non-VA clinics who represent Mobius Mobility, and we evaluate people and kind of train them in how to use it. So this is a group 3 chair. So the base of it is a group 3 chair, just like that last chair I just showed you. So it is covered by insurance. However, I talked about how certain codes, certain things aren't covered by insurance on a chair. And so all those fancy features, going up on 2 wheels, going in 4-wheel drive to go up and down, up to a 5-inch curb and going over the rocks, that's not covered either. Going up the stairs, that feature isn't covered. But the base chair, which is actually the bulk of the price, that would be covered. And you can get all the power seating features like that last group 3 chair I was showing you. You can get power tilt, power recline, power elevating seat, power elevating leg rest. You can get all that on the iBot. You can't get the power standing feature, however. And you can get whatever backrest and seat cushion you want as well. So, and that's the iBot. So that's it. Again, my name is Kathy SanMartino. I work in outpatient and run the wheelchair clinic. If you have any questions, you think you might benefit from coming to our wheelchair and seating clinic, the best way to get a hold of me is by email. And my email is ksanmartino, S-A-N as in Nicholas, M as in Mary, A-R-T-I-N-O @casacolina.org. And they'll type it on the screen for you as well. So you would need a physical therapy prescription for a wheelchair eval. If you have an HMO, you would need authorization to come. And then you can send me an email or call our front desk at 909-596-7733, extension 3500, and let them know that you'd like to schedule an appointment with Wheelchair Clinic. Thank you.